Hello, my name is Cyclone's Oz, and we are tracking the potential tropical cyclone in the Coral Sea right now. Located right here where the cursor is, it's a developing cyclone threat for the Queensland coastline. It could become a significant tropical cyclone of Category 3 proportions before it landfalls around the Eyre region. This is your latest update brought to you by Cyclone's Oz, the afternoon of January 23rd. It's a strengthening system and it is expected to still deliver a nasty blow to the coastline, but there again, new model data has came in over the past hour and we're really only seeing at peak here maybe a low-end Category 3 strength tropical cyclone. And the reason it's downtrended so much is because, well, we expected it to be a tropical cyclone by now, in fact by a couple of days ago, but it has just absolutely refused to form. So the reason why you've seen such a big downtrend, and why I'm also seeing quite a lot of comments regarding how I've hyped this storm up and so forth, well, I was going off the model forecast initially, and now we're just looking at what the models are doing again, and they've completely screwed this system up. So by gut feeling, I don't think this is going to get to Category 3 severe tropical cyclone status, but it is very wise still to prepare for that strength of a landfall between Townsville and Mackay. I'm just telling you that. So all of that details regarding its forecast and how to prepare coming up in this video. So stick around to the end and subscribe already if you haven't. It's a dangerous storm still. We are expecting it to come ashore with Category 3 strength conditions as per the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast, but again, it could be a little bit weaker than that. But yeah, throughout today and into tomorrow, you really need to be preparing for this system, because by tomorrow evening, it's definitely going to be a bit late, or a bit too late for preparations. The storm's landfall, or its expected landfall time, has been pushed back a little bit, however, which is good news. Now we're taking a look at the Access G3 model first of all, and you can see it ramps itself up in terms of intensity. The cyclone ramps itself up quite nicely over the next sort of 24 hours. It's definitely a powerful Category 2 cyclone as it passes, I believe, north of Marion Reef right there, very close to Marion Reef actually, and they'll be receiving some pretty nasty wind gusts from that tropical cyclone right in the eye. As it moves closer to the Queensland coastline, and thankfully by Wednesday evening they'll be receiving a little bit of relief to the absolute brutal heat that they're seeing there right now. Bowen, 34 degrees right now, and very hot indeed. So I do feel for you over here on the Queensland coastline. It would be very difficult preparing for a tropical cyclone in that sort of tropical heat. So I don't envy your positions whatsoever, but still make sure that you've got your preparations underway, and they should be nearing completion at this point. Things in the backyard should be battened down. Everything should be ready for wind gusts in excess of 200 kilometers an hour as this storm comes ashore, because it will be a significant system upon landfall. Now, by Thursday morning, we were expecting the landfall to happen about Thursday mid-morning a couple of days ago, but it's since been pushed back a little bit, which will give the cyclone an extra 12 hours to intensify as it approaches the coastline. You can see here it's approaching peak wind speeds of nearly Category 3 proportions, actually, and you'll be seeing wind gusts over here. We'll flick this over to the kilometers an hour actually. You'll be seeing peak wind gusts, that's not kilometers an hour, you'll be seeing peak wind gusts approaching 160 kilometers an hour in the storm center as it moves towards the Queensland coastline. So it remains very powerful right up towards landfall. Peak wind gusts 165 kilometers an hour. Those are very destructive wind gusts developing along the Whitsundays coastline by around Thursday evening, and they'll be driven across Hamilton Island into Bowen and Proserpine. So expect wind gusts of at least 150 kilometers an hour in that area. And again, any fluctuation in the storm's intensity over the next 12 hours, considering it's not expected to strengthen in that time. So if it does strengthen, there could be a significant change in the landfall intensity. So there's still this chance that this cyclone rapidly intensifies right up towards landfall. It's possible, but I mean, with the state of the storm right now, I'm not expecting it. The most likely scenarios we see a high-end Category 2 strength tropical cyclone, actually of similar proportions to Cyclone Jasper, making landfall on a place between Eyre and Bowen. That's sort of the most likely scenario at this time, but if I was you and you lived between Townsville and Proserpine, you should still very much be preparing for a severe tropical cyclone at this point, because it is a dangerous system still, and considering it hasn't formed, there's still a lot of variables in the forecast that we don't fully understand yet, which is just so annoying at this point, because we thought we'd have a clear picture, but we really don't. Now, landfall looks to happen around Thursday night time on this little cape here, just outside of Eyre and Home Hill, which I do apologise for calling that a suburb of Eyre. It's just sort of a town just down the road. But you can see still wind gusts approaching 165 kilometres an hour in the centre of the storm, and peak wind gusts around Bowen will be at least 140 kilometres an hour, probably approaching 150 in exposed coastal locations as this storm moves through. And then the maximum winds upon landfall, 160 to 170 kilometers an hour. A very strong Category 2 strength tropical cyclone. You're probably looking at something approaching Category 3 status at this point. These are wind gusts, mind you, not maximum sustained winds. The gusts are generally the most dangerous in the form of winds, because these are the sort of wind gusts that we can expect roof failure to occur from. They could down tree branches, they could down big power poles as well, and they'll turn any deck chairs or trampolines or whatever into missiles that can fly through your windows or into your cars. They'll blow away carports. These are very dangerous wind gusts indeed. Now, anywhere between Townsville down towards Bowen, including Townsville, they can expect wind gusts in excess of 100 kilometers an hour. So those are damaging wind gusts to destructive wind gusts, especially inland as well. You could be expecting some destructive wind gusts in exposed low-lying locations from this tropical cyclone as it moves through. So I would basically triangulate an area from Townsville, inland to Charters Towers, across to Collinsville, across to Proserpine, and up towards Hamilton Island. This is where you can be expecting damaging winds to occur. That's basically guaranteed at this point. And it's wise if you live between Ingham down towards Mackay to remove things that could potentially become airborne in this tropical cyclone, because there is still that chance that the cyclone wobbles a couple of kilometers to the north or the south, and that will bring the most destructive conditions further up or down the coastline, which will drastically change the impacts that certain locations receive. Right now, it looks like air is going to be ground zero for this tropical cyclone, which means anywhere between Townsville and Bowen. I think that's like the 400th time that I've said it. We'll be receiving those severe tropical cyclone conditions. So make sure you are prepared for those. Make sure you're rushing your preparations to completion at this point, because you ideally want them done by tonight so you don't have to prepare for tomorrow. But if you have to, you want to get them done by tomorrow morning, because you don't want to be preparing in full-blown cyclone conditions, that's for sure. That's when you should be hunkered down inside an interior part of your house, either a living room, or if you don't have it, an interior bathroom. Make sure you're staying safe from this tropical cyclone, because it is very dangerous indeed. It moves inland, remaining powerful, delivering damaging wind gusts to Charters Towers and up towards Ravenswood, approaching 120 kilometer an hour, those winds, so very strong still, and they remain reasonably strong at that damaging wind sort of threshold, 80 to 90 kilometers an hour on an average, until about Saturday morning, when they should start to ease off. There will still be damaging wind gusts from the thunderstorms associated with the remnants of this tropical low for a couple of days afterwards. I do believe it actually gets itself reasonably close to the coastline by next weekend and into Monday as it heads down towards the Sunshine Coast, and we could be seeing some damaging winds there as it picks up a little bit of extra fuel from the ocean. And those damaging wind gusts are possible right down to Gladstone, so I would not be surprised if a severe weather warning is issued for areas down towards the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane by around Friday, associated with the very heavy rainfall that this system is expected to bring, and also from the damaging winds that will likely be associated with that heavy rainfall. So just keep that in the back of your head. There is that chance of heavy rainfall and some pretty strong thunderstorm conditions associated with the remnants of this tropical cyclone as it moves through. Still though, remaining reasonably strong as it heads down there. Now we'll take a look at the Icon forecast model before we take a look at the predicted rainfall amounts, and then I'll be able to give you a really good idea on what to prepare for. But right now, I'd be saying preparing for a situation similar to Cyclone Debbie, where if you were flooded in Cyclone Debbie, just prepare now for some flooding, because this cyclone is going to be fairly similar to Debbie in terms of landfall intensity. They're both probably going to be a Category 3 strength tropical cyclone as per the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast. But again, there is this chance that this one completely busts. So Debbie might edge this one out as being a little bit more severe. But still, significant amounts of rainfall are expected. So we're going to play through the Icon forecast model right now, another reasonably accurate forecast model. As we get into Thursday evening, you can see the storm very strong here still. I believe we'll be seeing peak wind gusts probably be at the 150 kilometer an hour threshold, or actually 170 kilometers an hour. So it's actually a little bit stronger than what I have been seeing over the past couple of days. Does this concern me? Not as much, considering the Icon model is generally a little bit more inaccurate compared to other forecast models, but it still gives you an idea that we are expecting that strong cyclone to move through with very destructive winds. Now, on the opposite end of that scale is the GFS forecast. The GFS has a stupidly weak system making landfall. I mean, it's barely a tropical cyclone at this point, with peak wind gusts around the center, barely even 90 kilometers an hour, which is the Bureau of Meteorology's official damaging winds threshold. So if the GFS model comes to fruition, you're looking at a very weak Category 1 strength tropical cyclone. maybe even if that. This basically looks like a tropical low at this point. Still, the rain threat will definitely be here, but by the GFS's prediction, it looks like this storm could completely 110% fizz, which I don't put my money behind right now, but I really do hope that that happens for the sake of the Queensland coastline, because it's going to be a rough impact from this one if it holds up the way the forecast is saying. Now, we'll take a look at rainfall, because I know that's a major threat from this system. We're still looking at up to, I don't think this rainfall forecast is updated from this morning, which is annoying, but we're still looking out for very intense rainfall totals around Proserpine and Yalbaroo, up to 1,000 millimetres of rain in case you missed this morning's update. And we've also got a lot of rainfall inland around Charters Towers, Torrens Creek and Ravenswood, where this storm will be slowing down after it's made its initial landfall. There will be places picking up over sort of 800 millimetres in some locations. Again, that's probably a little bit extreme from the forecast at this point. I wouldn't be putting all of my money behind 1,800 millimetres, but once again, it is possible as this system makes its landfall. The rainfall, I guess, for the coastal areas is actually very accurate at this point. I do believe that the amount of rainfall that the models are expecting throughout the coast, 200 to 300 millimetres, which will fall in torrential falls, of course, because it is a tropical cyclone and a strong one at that. I believe that that's reasonably accurate. And also the rainfall down here adjacent to the coastline around Mackay, Proserpine, Gargett and down towards Clairview and St. Lawrence is also reasonably accurate as well, because there will be rainfall falling here from the inflow bands of the cyclone, which are a little bit more predictable compared to the storm's core, because regardless of where this storm moves, there will be these big banding features towards the southern side. You can already see them starting to develop on the eastern side of the system, actually on the satellite imagery. These thunderstorms here have a lot of rainfall embedded in them. And as they move closer to the coastline, they're going to drop all of that rainfall and moisture on the mountains adjacent to Mackay and the coastline through here. So that's when we're going to see these ridiculous rainfall accumulations approaching 1,000 millimetres in one or two locations, which will push rivers beyond their major flooding alerts. And it will be a similar amount of rainfall to what Cyclone Debbie did dump around Charters Towers when she made landfall in 2017. It's going to be a very wet one indeed for this part of the coastline. It's a little bit more unpredictable as you get further inland, but around the coastline, it's very, very predictable and pretty easy to say what's going to happen. Now, I cited a bunch of comments about how the weather was clear for areas around the coastline between Cairns down towards Rockhampton. It's going to remain clear until probably about sunset tonight, when you're going to start to see this wispy clouds start to blow over the coastline. And this is probably when you're going to start to see the more significant wind gusts blow through the area from later on tonight. It's already starting to get pretty windy around Hamilton Island right now, with peak wind gusts approaching 30 knots or 60 kilometers an hour. So yeah, some strong wind gusts are already starting to form down there associated with this tropical cyclone's motion through here, and they will deteriorate later into tonight. So if you do live around Mackay, Hamilton Island and Proserpine, it's advised that you get your preparations done tonight or by tonight, and then you've got all day tomorrow to really watch this system and stay inside and stay safe. But if you live north of Proserpine up to around Ingham, then you've got an extra sort of 6 hours tomorrow morning to get your preparations rushed to completion. But once again, make sure you've got your cyclone emergency kits in place and all sorted. You've got enough water for the people in your household. 5 litres a day per person is sort of the number that I would use for just drinking water alone. If you want extra for cooking or for cleaning or washing, then maybe get an extra 10 litres per person per day. So in all, you're going to need a lot of water. If you've got a tank or a couple of big barrels, then that's really handy to have. But I don't know if anyone's got big, like, kind of oil, 55-gallon oil barrels lying around. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was a bit of a hassle to get sorted. Don't panic buy, of course, but if you can get your hands on as much canned food as possible, then that's also advised, just to really stay ahead and give you an extra 3 or 4 days if you are living in an area that's prone to be being cut off rather. But if you live in a metro area, like, well, not a metro area, but a big town such as Townsville or down towards Mackay, then you're unlikely to be cut off for more than 48 hours, considering they have very important town sites to the Queensland coastline. So you can probably get away with having 1 or 2 days worth of food supplies. Non-perishable food is always advised, because there's a very good chance that you're going to lose power in a situation like this as well. And if you've got a backup generator to power the esky, then that's always a good thing as well. Get fuel as well for that generator, and also for cars as well. Maybe have 50 litres in jerry cans just on the go. That's way more than what you'd need, but It's always great to have a buffer amount. And if you live in a more isolated area, then prepare adequately for that. I'm not from a cyclone prone area, so it's interesting for me to be commenting on this. I'm not too experienced in tropical cyclones whatsoever. I just track them here on YouTube. So I hope that I'm doing a good job. But yeah, make sure that you're following your Shire's advice, your council's advice, and also the Bureau of Meteorology's advice, because they're the officials and they really know what they're talking about. However, the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast is getting a little bit confusing. Let's take a look at that right now, actually. So here is a little graphic that I made. It's a combination of the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast over here, and then we've got the Americans forecast and also the multi-model diagnostic comparison, because that's interesting, and I'll break that down in just a second. But you can see the Bureau of Meteorology still expecting that Category 3 severe tropical cyclone landfall. And if I'm to extrapolate that, they're calling for a rapidly intensifying system right up towards landfall, making landfall at around 8 p.m. tomorrow, not tomorrow, January 25th. What's that? Thursday. And then blowing inland. They've got that cyclone watch from Cairns down to St. Lawrence, including Mackay, Hamilton Island, Airlie Beach, Bowen, up towards Townsville and Cardwell, and also Innisfail. But I don't think Cairns is included in that. And I believe their cyclone watch is probably a little bit extreme. I don't see how St. Lawrence gets cyclone conditions from this, and also don't see how anywhere north of Cardwell gets cyclonic conditions from this tropical cyclone either. So I think the Bureau of Meteorology are being ultra cautious with this cyclone, which, I mean, fair enough, it is a concerning system, but it's just given how long it's taken to develop. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if she completely dies off before she develops, so I wouldn't be absolutely following the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast to a T right now. I'd be making your own best judgment, especially for those that have experienced 50 years worth of cyclones. You guys know exactly what's going on up there, but still, I would highly advise preparing for this Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone landfall. There's a good chance it doesn't happen, but there is still that chance that it happens, and it's just best to be over-prepared in a situation like this. Now for a look at the multi-model diagnostic comparison. Now this is a little bit more nerd stuff here. So this is a comparison between the two forecast models, the GFS and the HWRF. Now I just spoke about how the GFS was lowballing the system and hardly has it as a tropical cyclone whatsoever. The HWRF is very bullish when it comes to storms. It's actually calling for a Category 4 strength peak with winds up to around 90 knots actually very early on Australia Day. They're calling for it to move, as you can see on the blue track here, a little bit further south as well, bringing the landfall right onto Hamilton Island, which I don't find plausible whatsoever. Well, actually, that'd be around Mackay. So I would completely discount the blue line here. But what is interesting about this is you can see sea surface temperatures, very warm, 29 degrees Celsius for the rest of the storm's life. Mid-level humidity is okay for the system. For a strengthening storm, I'd ideally want to see it a little bit higher, but that's good news for the Queensland coast. And wind shear as well, which keeps the thunderstorms from being blown apart. The lower it is, the better it is for the cyclone, and it does remain relatively low, probably within that good to maybe moderate range. So yeah, the storm does actually have ample fuel to intensify, and I'm just surprised and really curious at why it isn't intensifying, because under these sort of conditions and thresholds, it should 100% be rapidly intensifying right now, but it isn't, and that is good news for the Queensland coastline. Anyway, I'm starting to waffle here. If you have enjoyed the afternoon update, then please do consider subscribing, and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. I want to thank the channel sponsors so much. Your support is greatly appreciated, and if you too want to get your name mentioned at this part of the video, then make sure to click the join button down below. It really does help me out. But that's all from me, and I'll catch you on the next storm. Goodbye.